The president's address started off with, these women coming to the front, right, and wanting to make a point about the need to sign the moratorium on evictions. How was that received and handled by the president? Was it even acknowledged at all in his speech?
Well, Tulas, those were women from the organization Women on Farms, which is an NGO that represents and fights for the rights of particularly female farm laborers here in the agricultural areas. Now, it's quite significant that today's celebrations was here in Paarl, in the Boerland, a very deep and rooted agricultural sector. Now, these women said that 4 years ago, when still Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa had said or had committed to signing a moratorium on farm evictions, which mainly impact female farm workers and their children. Now, this organization said 4 years on, the now president has made very little effort to come back to that province. They promised, they say, that up to 20,000 people in the Paarl area and the Drakensberg area alone could be affected by a farm eviction soon. Now, the president had acknowledged their presence. He said that he had seen them holding a picket while he came in, and he had acknowledged their presence here today. He says that he will sit down with him and get back to him. But I spoke to the woman, one of the women representing the group outside, saying that if they do not receive any word from the president in the next 14 days, they then will plan a mass march of farm workers led by women to Parliament to stress this issue of farm evictions is a major cause of concern, and it's part of the broader issue, to us, is we on the land debate, the land question, and what it means for particularly a rural woman, and that they want President Cyril Ramaphosa, when dealing with this land debate, to take on board the voices and the opinions of particularly rural women when formulating the policy of land expropriation without compensation, with a land reform project. And he says that, and they say that this is the voice, these are the voices that should come to the forefront, and that any land reform policy should mainly and primarily benefit particularly rural women who for decades, and one would argue centuries, been a victim to a colonial project which has seen the ancestors removed from the land, and that still obviously has its lingering effects to this day.
Right, Lester, I must tell you then, while you're talking about that, you should have then heard what the EFF leader had to say at their Women's Day event in Pietermaritzburg, particularly the theme around 1 woman, 1 hectare of land. But nevertheless, in as far as the president's speech is concerned, Lester, what else did he have to say around the issues that we're seeing playing themselves out right now, including what many have characterized as a war on women in South Africa?
Well, our events are labeled as a celebration of Women's Day, but there's very little to celebrate if we look at the high statistics of gender-based violence, particularly in South Africa. The president acknowledging that the South African average or statistics of gender-based violence, he admits, is much higher than the international trend, and he says this is a worrying situation which has reached epidemic proportions. The president saying that South African men should in fact hang their heads in shame and introspect what South African men are doing to South African women. He acknowledged the hashtag Total Shutdown march to the Union buildings last week, drawing parallels between last week's march and the 1956 march by women against pass laws to the Union buildings. He says that he was humbled by the testimonies that he's heard from particularly young women, stories of abuse and of rape, but also the secondary trauma of help.
All right, we seem to have lost that line there to Lester Kivitt in Paarl. He was updating us about the Women's Day commemorations and celebrations that have been taking place, the official event there that was addressed by President Cyril Ramaphosa.